Good evening. Welcome to today's Tropics for July 31st, 2020. Please note I'm not a meteorologist, and this video is just a collection of my thoughts and opinions about the storm I'm talking about. And for any decision making, please consult the National Hurricane Center or your local officials. So today I'm looking at Hurricane Isaias right now, and in the past day, it's organized quite a bit. It actually became a hurricane late last night, just north of Hispaniola, and has continued to be one. And it was disorganized early this morning and had a nearly exposed low-level center, but it's had an impressive bout of re-intensification today. It hasn't deepened a whole lot, and the wind has just come up from the minimum at 65 knots. But the structure is much better than it was this morning, and it looks like the storm will be poised for possibly more strengthening in the next few days. One thing to notice is the outflow is actually pretty good right now, especially since there is supposed to be shear in the area. You can see the upper level outflow emanating even out of the south a little bit. It's a bit restricted, but it's especially impressive out to the west and going to the north. So it seems that shear isn't a huge problem for Isaias right now, though it might be soon. Again, there is some southerly shear, so that's why you're seeing that restriction here. And there's a bit of dry air trying to get in between these two blobs of convection. So there's this conveyor belt of dry air trying to get in, but we'll have to see if it can actually do so. It might try to disrupt the eye wall it's trying to get going, but we shall see. Taking a look at the infrared imagery right now, you can see that there's some convection near the center, and it's trying to actually rotate around. And you can actually see that the center is around here, so it's not even on the southwest side of the convection like you'd expect with some southwesterly shear in the area. In fact, it's maybe a bit biased the other way, so it really doesn't seem like there is a huge problem with shear, at least at the moment, and that's allowing Isaias to actually build up a core. And if it can axisymmetrize like this and actually have the convection spinning around that low, then the inner core that will be formed might be able to resist some of those intrusions of dry air and shear, and that may mean you won't see as much of the weakening that is expected by the National Hurricane Center or some of the models. Looking at the water vapor imagery, you can see a few things. There's again that large upper trough here to the north. You got this easterly flow aloft to the north, and then that changes to west. So that means you have an upper trough around here, and there's especially evidence of it here. There's some westerly shear in this area, but it turns more easterly towards the north. So that means in this area you have convergence aloft, and so you're having very dry air ahead of Isaias. So if it isn't too well organized, along with the shear, you're going to see that dry air try to wrap in and disrupt the core. But you see, again, shear isn't a huge issue. There's pretty good outflow, especially considering how it looked today. So it does seem that the shear's backed off a little today. We'll have to see how it is in the next couple days, and if it tries to disrupt Isaias. Looking at the radar, you can see it's tried to close off an eye wall. It seems in the newer data here that it's opened up again, and you can also see that area of dry air trying to get in between those two blobs. So we'll see if that can try to disrupt the core. And here, this area is between two different radar sites, so it might be partially an artifact, but it does seem that the eye wall has opened up again. So that means it's left open to more eye wall disruptions and more structure. It's more open to disruptions in general from that southwesterly shear and the dry air. So this would, if this can't close off again, then it might be maybe a bit more vulnerable to unfavorable conditions in the future. As we speak, there's a recon mission inside Isaias right now, and it has found that's deepened slightly to 988 millibars, so it is in a deepening phase. And with the last pass a little later, you can see heading there. It looks like it took a little bit of a west-northwest wobble because it isn't quite as straight as the northwest that we've been seeing lately today, and it deepened just a little. And but one thing definitely to note is it still has that fetch of strong wind, especially at flight level to the north. So you're getting a lot of 64 knot flight level wind values. Uh, it's likely lower at the surface, but it is consistent with that. Area of stronger wind at the ground. So even if you're not near the core and you're to the northeast here in the Bahamas, some of the islands in the Bahamas, you might be experiencing those high winds again. If you even if you're not in this core where you would expect those high winds to be. Looking at the generally current upper level conditions, 200 millibars, you can see some of the features that were in water vapor. There's this upper trough just near Hispaniola, and Isaias is currently displaced from that a little. But you can see that in some ways it is benefiting from this upper level divergence that is allowing outflow to go out and into this upper trough to the east. But you also see this other upper troughing here that comes into Cuba and then the Florida Straits. And here you have some convergence aloft. If you look at some of the streamlines here, they get closer to each other, and that upper convergence means you end up with some drier air in those regions because that upper convergence means dry air has to sink, or air has to sink, and then it warms and dries. So that is one reason why you have a lot of dry air ahead of Isaias, and why this upper trough is helping to make conditions a bit less favorable. And this upper level wind from the south is expected to intensified a little, which is expected to shear Isaias in the modeling, and this also shoves dry air into the circulation. And this is why you end up seeing the modeling depicting a lot of weakening of the storm, and the more part of the reason for more of the west tracks now going into Florida. That's partly due to external features, but partly due to the weaker trend, in which it would move a bit more west-northwest instead of northwest, and would also move faster. Looking in the future, as it curves to the north, we'll have to see if it's still over water. If it takes more of a west track, it might be over land at this point. But if it does only make a shave at Florida's coastline or misses altogether, you might see an environment that is favorable for intensification as it starts turning to the northeast, and you can see that given a bit of displacement from this upper anticyclone, that means you have the storm motion in phase with the shear with the upper level wind vector. So that means that some of the shear gets canceled out, so you have lower shear, and you also have this favorable jet interaction where you'd have upper level divergence, and that means you might get large scale ascent near the low. So if it is still over water and isn't going too far inland, it might be able to intensify as it starts turning a bit more extratropical to the north. Next thing to watch for Isaias' steering is this upper trough, or this trough that's digging into the Midwest right now, right here. And it's actually trended a little slower, and that means the ridge is able to keep overhead of Isaias for a bit longer, which means it can continue its northwest track for longer, and that means it basically can't turn as fast, and that has made it trend closer to the coast of Florida or even inland into Florida. Another reason for this is that the models have weakened it a lot, and weaken it a lot in the next couple of days, and that means it moves a bit more or a bit faster and less northwest. So that would give you a more south and west solution. I'm not sure how much I believe those as much anymore because it does seem the system is organizing a lot, and it might have a harder time actually weakening that much, especially if it is able to develop a well-developed inner core that might be able to resist some of those weakening or some of those unfavorable conditions that'll make it want to weaken. But it does look like even with a stronger storm, you might see you're still seeing that trend with Isaias getting closer to the Florida coastline. So this is why even if it is trending away from you, don't let your guard down because you're having trend back in this case. And if you get caught unprepared, that won't be good if it does end up being closer to a worst case scenario. You can see eventually here, though, it does look like it will end up picking Isaias up. Just depends whether it's over land. That would mean probably no more intensification. It does appear at this point you're still seeing the same sort of thing with a stronger system to the east and a weaker system to the west because that weaker system's caught in the more west northwesterly flow that's faster, but a stronger storm would be able to feel some of the more northwesterly and weaker flow, so it would move more north, less east, or less west, and slower, and that means it can't move as far west and close to the east coast before the trough starts to pick it up. However, the entire envelope has moved to the west, and that means you definitely should be on guard, especially in the east coast of Florida, where there are some hurricane warnings. Again, looking at the ensembles here, you can see it's a very bifurcated type of thing going on here, and it's still strong system going to the west, going to the east, and staying more offshore. So that means if you have a stronger system to start, you actually may have a stronger system potentially striking the east coast because it would stay offshore, and with those more favorable upper level conditions, as it starts to recurve, you might see it try to intensify before it becomes less tropical. And this is indeed what some members of the Euro ensemble do. They start strengthening into the Outer Banks of North Carolina, so you should still be watching it there too. But it's definitely a lot more uncertain, and the timing is also more uncertain because it could be spread within a couple of days. But definitely the more immediate threat is to the Bahamas and Florida. But definitely keep your eye on this if you are up the East Coast, because it does look like this could scrape near the East Coast. If especially if it's stronger. Looking at the GFS ensemble here, it's a bit weaker and therefore it seems be a bit more west, but you still have the same general idea. These weaker members are to the west of the main or the average line, and you have the stronger ensembles to the east. Looking at the official National Hurricane Center cone, you can see that the east coast of Florida does seem to be under the gun now. There are some hurricane warnings because the wind threat has increased to likely more hurricane force winds. As you can see, the trend west has happened too. Now the cone has it pretty much on the coast of Florida, but it could trend west or east between now and then. So definitely keep your eye on the forecast because small trend could mean some large differences depending on whether it weakens inland or scrapes the coast, or you may avoid the core altogether. So it really depends how it trends. So definitely don't keep your eye on the center line of this cone, but basically know that it can be pretty much anywhere inside the cone, and that's why it is a cone. Right now, there's already impacts happening in the Bahamas. Unfortunately, it does look like Abaco and the Grand Bahama are also under hurricane warnings, and a system like Isaias is really not what they need after Hurricane Dorian struck them at a Category 5 strength last year, and sadly, they're getting hit by another cyclone, luckily weaker, but they don't really need one at all. If you're in Florida, definitely make sure you're already pretty much prepared. And if you're not totally prepared, Rush your preparation to completion because the system will be coming soon, and you'll start seeing those early effects as soon as tomorrow, even, and it'll likely pass closest offshore on Sunday. And it does appear that as it turns north, it's not going to be moving as fast. It's already started slowing down to only 15 miles an hour instead of closer to 20. So you might have hours of these conditions depending on how close the core is to you and how strong the storm is. Definitely be prepared for a hurricane strength cyclone, given the warnings you have, and even if you're outside of that area, just be prepared for a stronger storm because it's always good to over prepare and rather than under prepare. And along with that, you're also going to see some impacts outside the center, and that will be in the form of some banding rain, uh, along with the core too. But you might see some heavy, possibly flooding rain. So if you know you're in an area that's flood prone, you might end up seeing flooding from the heavy rain from the storm. So be prepared for that. And at the same time, given it's a bit stronger now and at hurricane strength, there's at this point 2 to 4 feet along the east coast of Florida. 2 to 4 feet of surge, and that surge threat is also going to be similar to the rain threat in terms of water. If you are in a flood-prone area, make sure you know that you're in a flood-prone area, and be prepared for some flooding that would come from that surge. And further north, there aren't warnings yet because it's just frankly too early, and we don't quite know where it's going to go. The cone is pretty large still at this point because forecast errors are large. But if you are on the coast here, especially in parts that stick out, such as parts of Massachusetts and the Outer Banks of North Carolina, keep your eye on the storm because you could also get a similar hit with uncertain timing, but sometime this early week. Uh, but definitely the most immediate impacts are in Florida and the Bahamas. But again, don't let your guard down if you are further to the north. Otherwise, we've got Tropical Depression 10 now in the Atlantic, and still a few invested in the West Pacific, but otherwise, not too much going on in the tropics. If you have any questions or comments about my video, please let me know, and thanks for watching.